Hello, my name is Nathan Elias. I'm a senior at the Liberal Arts and Science Academy in Austin, Texas, which is a high school, and my project focuses on a deep learning methodology for early detection and outbreak prediction of invasive species growth. And so a little bit of background about invasive species and the motivation behind this research. Because of invasive species, 42% of endangered species worldwide are at further risk. And in fact, there's a $1.2 trillion cost due to invasive species globally. And the current methods of tracking invasive species growth are extremely manual and laborious, and in fact, it requires a lot of expertise and field work, but their invasive species are able to thrive because of a lack of experts in the field. And so my research focuses on creating a machine learning based framework to address this issue. And primarily I'm creating 2D and 3D convolutional neural networks which can detect invasive species via an image. The 2D CNNs can detect invasive species via a mobile app or a smartphone camera. The 3D CNNs can detect invasive species from any kind of 3D data. And these are then fed into a geospatial LSTM, which projects specific points of invasive species spread in the future, enabling researchers and field workers to take action on invasive species before it's too late. And so starting off with the 2D based detection, or the image-based detection, I created 4 types of 2D convolutional neural networks, or CNNs, and these were created for invasive plants, wildlife, insects, and pathogens, which are the 4 major types or groups of invasive species, and this was for 114 total invasive species. And originally I had 45,000 training images from the iNaturalist website, but because this was a less than 1,000 images per class, I had to create image augmentation and a GAN pipeline, which increased the number of images per species by 1,000, and I fed these images into the Inception V3 architecture via transfer learning, and I achieved a 93.5% classification accuracy, as well as a 91% top 5 accuracy in the field on actual samples of invasive species. And so moving on to the 3D detection part, I created a PointNet 3D model, and I trained it on actual cloud samples or voxel samples of invasive species. And so here you can see the 3D scans. There are different types of environmental conditions. For example, this is a high light, this is a high heat condition, this is a shade condition, and there are also drought conditions as well. And so these scans are also based on the temporal growth stages. So for example, some scans are of invasive species in the seedling stage, and some scans are of fully grown invasive species. So this dataset had over 152 million cloud points, and I achieved 97.78% accuracy with the PointNet 3D model. And so finally, here's the geospatial prediction. I used over 1.6 million historical reportings of invasive species, and I generated 3 heat maps per species. And so how it works and how the geospatial LSTM works is that I pass in the latitude and longitude occurrences, but I also pass in 3 other parameters, which are clusters. And so the HTTP scan algorithm, as you can see here, for example, it creates automatic clusters of invasive species. There are also weather patterns like humidity, temperature, and rainfall, and predation and competition using the Haversine distance formula to measure competition between invasive species of similar types. So these parameters are all passed into the LSTMs, which create 3 separate heat maps of spread. So here's what the final app looks like. And this is not included 3D detection. That is a separate research project that I'm working on in the future. But you can simply take a photo of invasive species, it classifies it using the 2D CNNs, and then you can click on a future projection button. For example, if you click on a year, it'll get this heat map which shows invasive species projections in a year, and these red areas represent areas of spread. Thank you so much for listening.